Hey guys, my name is Yidong Jin, and for this video, I'll be going over how to properly study for the SAT. Now, I did have a video up on my channel at around March of this year, but this video will be an updated guide for the 2025 to 2026 year, and it's going to basically be more shorter, more concise, with better information, and it's going to have only information that you need to know to kind of understand how you should be studying for the SAT. And so I know a lot of you guys are confused on what resources should I use? How should I use these resources? What should I do to really get a general idea of what the SAT is like? And I'll be covering all of that in this video, so stick around to the end if you want to get a 1600. Okay, and this is the agenda for today. We'll be going over test format and content, so basically just general idea of what the SAT is about. The formatting of it, the content, the section breakdowns, all of that good stuff. And after that, we'll be going over preparation strategies. So this is the main part of the video where I talk about how to study, what resources you should be using, how to properly use these resources, all that good stuff. And so if you already have a general idea of the SAT, so you already know how it's scored, what concepts are on the SAT, what it's really about, how it's formatted, then I would recommend you skip to this portion of the video where I just immediately start talking about how to study for the SAT. And so the timestamp will be up in the screen right now. Alright, and after all of that, I'll be going over post-SAT info and tips. So this is information that you should know after you've taken your SAT and you've gotten your score back. I'll be going over scoring, so what's a good score, what's an average score, how that's all going to play in now that colleges are making SAT scores mandatory for college applications. And I'll also be going over retaking and restudying and how that's going to play into you. Okay, so the SAT is a standardized test that quote-unquote demonstrates college readiness, which definitely is not true. It's 2 hours and 14 minutes long and has 98 questions in total. Okay, to be more specific, the SAT is split into 4 modules in total with 2 for each subject. How it's going to work is you're going to get the reading modules first, so you're going to get 2 reading modules, and then after that you'll move on to math where you get 2 math modules. And as you can see on the screen, reading and writing is 64 minutes long with 54 questions in total, and that's going to be spread evenly to 2 modules. And the same thing for math, it's just math is a bit longer with less questions. The first module is going to be a mix of easy, medium, and hard questions, but it's going to be a majority of easy questions. So it's going to be around 80% easy questions. And depending on how you do on that first module, you either get a hard or easy second module. And this is the same for both English and math. And the easy section has a score cap, while the hard section allows you to score the maximum 800 points for each subject. So you want to do really good on that first module, because if you fail the first module and you get the easy version of the second module, then what's going to end up happening is you will get a maximum cap of 600 points for each section, which is ideal. Okay, so you can score a maximum of 1600 points in total for the SAT, with 800 points being available per subject. And the questions are categorized from easy, medium, and hard. And so the general idea for easy to hard questions is that if you get an easy question wrong, it'll cost about 30 points. Medium questions, it'll cost 20 points, and hard questions 10. And how you can think of it when it comes to scoring for the SAT is everyone starts with a baseline of 800 points each for each subject. And for every question you get wrong, that score will go lower and lower and lower. And so let's say you got around 5 hard questions wrong, maybe 2 medium questions, and 1 easy question. You will get, it'll go down by 120 points, and so you'll get a 680. And so let's say for math, you got 5 hard questions wrong, 1 medium, and 1 easy question wrong in total for both the modules. It'll cost you 100 points, so you will end up getting a 700. On the SAT, there are also experimental questions that are there purely for data. They're also known as pretest questions, and that's what College Board calls them. There's 2 per module, and so there's 8 in total throughout the whole entire test. They're not worth any points, so it doesn't matter if you get them right or wrong. But the trick here is you won't know which questions are experimental questions. There's literally 0 way to tell. And so you're just going to have to go and try to solve every single question right. Alright, so here's all the concepts that are tested on the SAT. Now I'm not going to go over all of these, but there's 4 main topics per subject. So English has 4 main topics, while math has 4 main topics. And under these main topics, there's more of these subtopics. And basically, every single question on the SAT falls under one of these subtopics. And so you're going to be tested on all these concepts, and you can expect for any of these to show up on your test. So now I'm going to be going over preparation strategies, which is just going over how to properly study for the SAT. And so studying for the SAT is all about repetition and getting used to the questions the SAT throws at you. And so you can think of the SAT as like a brand new class that you're studying for. Alright, so you have 7 practice tests in total from the official Blue Book app that College Board gives you. So you want to spread them out evenly. And a lot of people, like, before you even like do any studying, they recommend you to take a practice test first as like a quote-unquote diagnostic. But what I recommend you to do is watch these 4 guys first and then take your first practice test. So I'll have this Google Slides linked up to my description below, or you can just search them up on YouTube and find the videos yourselves. But if you watch these 4 videos, they give you like a sort of insight on what the SAT is gonna be about. They give you an insight on what the questions are like, and they also help you like understand how to tackle each of these questions. So by watching these 4 videos first and then kind of getting a grasp of, how to solve the questions on the SAT, you'll perform much better than just going in raw. Alright, so here are the resources that I use to study for the SAT. What I recommend for everyone to do is try out like other resources too, but this is like what I stuck with when studying for the SAT. Just to start off, there's Blue Book, which is used for the official SAT practice test. There's like 10 in total. Like there's gonna be 7 on the actual like app, but you can find 3 more that were like kind of removed from the like SAT practice test because they were quote unquote inaccurate to the SAT. But you can find like walkthroughs on like the old 3 tests on like YouTube, and so you can go search that up and find them yourselves. But there's 7 official practice tests on Blue Book, and you use these as your main resource because they're one-on-one copies to the actual SAT exam that you're gonna be taking, and they also score it like immediately for you, so you can get an insight of like where you're at by looking at what your score is. Alright, and there's also the College Board question bank, and this is like if you need any extra practice on like specific SAT questions. And so I mentioned on like the previous slides, every single SAT question falls under like a specific subtopic or like concept, and you can literally just search up that specific concept and get questions that are like fall under that concept. And so this should be used for like if you need help or like extra practice on specific questions. And you also got YouTube, which is the most underrated resource in my opinion, because it provides you with general guides, specific guides, and walkthroughs. And you can literally search up anything on YouTube and find like an expert or like another YouTuber covering the topic. Because a lot of the people that upload videos onto YouTube are people who scored highs, like high 1500s to 1600s even. But like on YouTube, you'll find anything. Like for example, if you're struggling with like circles on math and you need like a Desmos guide on it, you can literally just search up SAT circles Desmos guide and you'll find a bunch of videos just covering it. Alright, finally you got Khan Academy, which is also just extra practice for specific questions. And I think they're a useful resource, but I didn't use it that much because I found it to be really, really boring. Like the way they format like everything, like the structure of their guides is I found it to be just super boring to do. And it's not an official resource like College Board, so the questions may be a bit different, but it's Khan Academy, so obviously like it's a good resource to use. Now beyond the resources that I like listed here, there's obviously more SAT resources that you can find on the internet. So something like OnePrep that I heard was really good to use. There's also that one Penguin, whatever it was, that was apparently good. But in my opinion, like you should test out these resources yourself and see what works best for you. See what gives you the best practice instead of like following what I did. Alright, now that we've gone over what resources you can use for the SAT, let's go over how long to actually study for the SAT. And so you want to give yourself around 3 months in total to study for the SAT. Like 3 months is like, in my opinion, the perfect amount of time you need to study for the SAT because it gives you that much enough time to be flexible with your studying, but also like enough time so that you don't forget some of the stuff that you've learned about. And you want to also make sure to register for the SAT at least 3 months or more before the test date, as you want to secure a testing site close to you and not far away from you. And so what I mean by that is, like, let's say you want to take the December SAT for this year. You want to sign up for that like right now, and I mean right now, because the seats fill up really quickly for these testing sites. And so by signing up like 3 months or more ahead of time, you'll get a testing site that's close to you. But let's say you sign up for like 2 months or even just 1 month ahead of time, you're gonna have to go to a testing site that's super far away from you, and you don't want that because the SAT, it's like early in the morning. So if it's far away from you, you're gonna have to wake up earlier so that you can drive to that testing site, and you really don't want that. I also want to emphasize that even just 1 month of studying could like theoretically be enough, but it requires a lot of cramming. And so that's why I suggest people to like study 3 months ahead of time. But I know like for in my case for like because I took two SAT tests, and for both of them I only studied 2 weeks ahead of time, and so that required me to like cram a lot. Like I had to study basically every single day for like hours, and that's how I like got a good score for them. But you know, even just 1 week of studying could be enough. But I suggest you study for 3 months so that you have that flexibility and you don't need to actually like cram for the SAT either. Now moving on to study routines. Before I show you like what my study routine was and what I did every single day, I want to emphasize that you should find what works best for you and create your own study routine rather than following someone else's. So remember how I mentioned you should take like 3 months of studying for the SAT. Take the first month of those 3 months of studying for the SAT to figure out what resources works best for you, what doesn't work for you, and how you want to split your weeks for studying, and like what resources you want to use per day. Because at the end of the day, every person works and learns differently. And so you want to figure out what works best for you rather than just copying someone else's. Alright, so here's the routine that I used for the SAT. As you can see, on Saturdays I took a practice test, and on Sunday and Monday I would review each of the subject modules. So on Sunday I reviewed English modules, while on Monday I reviewed the math modules. And on Tuesday and Wednesday I would study the incorrect like questions I got per like module. And on Thursdays and Fridays I would do additional studying for topics I was still confused on or I took too much time on. And on weeks where I needed to cram, like really cram, I would combine English and math focused days together into one. So for example, you see how for Sunday and Monday I reviewed the subject, like the modules for each subject separate. I would combine both of those days and review both the English and math modules for that day. Going into the specifics of like what resources I used per day. On Saturday, for the practice test, I took the Blue Book practice test. On Sunday and Monday, when I was reviewing, I would just go onto the College Board website, see the diagnostic for the practice test I took on Blue Book, and I would just review that. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays, for the incorrect questions, I would search up, like, for example, if I took the practice test 7 for Blue Book, I would search up SAT practice test 7 onto YouTube, and I'd find full-on walkthroughs and guides that go over like every single question on that SAT practice test. And on Thursdays and Fridays when I did additional studying, if I like, so for example, if I was stuck on, let's say, geometry for math, I would search up SAT geometry studying or SAT geometry guides, and I would just watch the videos on that. And especially for like math, I would recommend going onto this one guy's channel named John Jung. He goes over basically everything that's on SAT math, and he's just a valuable resource that you should be using. I also want to like show you guys what I did to like track what questions I got wrong and like how to review for each of them. So this is for practice 7. Like I would go onto a Google Doc and basically I would write down all my incorrect questions. And so as you can see right here, for module 1 I got one question wrong for English, and on module 2 I got all of these questions wrong. So I wrote down like what the concept was and like, you know, what it was about. And for math, I did the same thing right here, and I would link like the actual videos to like the specific math questions. So if I go onto this guy's channel right here, this guy is super useful, by the way. This guy, he went over like all the questions that are on the SAT. As you can see, like all the questions that are on the SAT practice test, they're on here. And so you should use this guy's channel if you want to review specific questions that were on your practice tests. And anyways, yeah, this is just how I sort of tracked down what I needed to study up on and what I needed to review. As you can see, additional topics to review. These are the questions I was like sort of confused on or like sort of like took too much time on. And yeah, now I want to talk about when you should take your SAT. Because a lot of people like to say certain months are more difficult than other months, but there's like no real confirmation that that's true. In my opinion, the only thing that really matters is if you are ready and prepared for the SAT. So I would recommend picking months that would give you the most amount of studying time possible, because SAT, you're gonna have to juggle SAT studying with your school assignments, with your extracurriculars, all of that. And so June is pretty good because it's right after AP exams, and by then you won't have any finals either. I took June and I scored really well, so you know it's a little bit of bias, but I would recommend June. August and September are also really good. They're like the most ideal months because you have all of summer to study for the SAT when you if you're taking August or September. And March is also good because that's the start of the second semester, and you'll be done with like midterms by then, and you'll have more time to study for the SAT. Now, I didn't write down like what months you should be avoiding, but some months that you should be avoiding that just off the top of my head is May, because that's like the exact same time as like the AP exam, so obviously you don't want to overlap those two. You also want to avoid December because that's like by the time when your finals are, or not finals, your midterms. And so you don't want to take December either. But just off the top of my head, December, May are like the months that you should be avoiding. Alright, now I'll be talking about post SAT info and tips. So for example, like what's a good score? What you should do with your score? Like should you retake or should you keep it or whatever, right? So I want to start off with by saying scores come out 2 weeks after your test date. So on College Board, you'll find like the exact date when your scores come out. They'll post like, oh, what the August SAT score comes out here. The June SAT score comes out at this date. You will know the exact date for it. So they always come out like way past midnight, and it all depends on your region. For mine, for example, I live in California, so I go by PST time. Mine would always come out at around 4 a.m. And I know for EST, it normally comes out at like around 6 to 7 a.m. in the morning. And so you could always stay up for the SAT, like for your SAT score to come out, but I just wouldn't recommend it. You can get a good night's sleep and then wake up and just open your SAT score. Now this part is super important. Because SAT is now mandatory for most schools, the average SAT of those schools will go down from 1500s to around mid 1400s or even low 1400s. The reason why I say this is because when the SAT was test optional, only the highest scores would get submitted to colleges. And so, like, let's say a person scored a 1550, they would obviously submit that because that's a super high score. But let's say a person scored like a 1450 on their SAT, they wouldn't submit it just in case, that lower score would hurt their application. But now that the SAT scores are mandatory for, like, for example, UPenn's mandatory, I know like Harvard's mandatory, I think. Everyone's going to be submitting their SAT scores no matter if it's good or bad. So now getting mid to high 1400s will make you a super competitive applicant for colleges compared to before when you needed like a 1500 at least to stand out among your competition. And like even getting a 1350 will make you an average applicant who can still have a competitive application for these top colleges. And so what I want to emphasize is there's really no such thing as a bad score. Now that the SAT is mandatory and everyone's going to be submitting their scores, you should definitely aim for like as high as possible. But if you get at least a 1350, you should be fine for college applications. And getting like a minimum of 1400 is good, but if you're able to retake the SAT, then retake it until you get at least like a 1500. You should retake the SAT for a maximum of 3 times, and the reason why I say this is because it's useful for super scoring. And don't take it more than 3 times because it will be a red flag to colleges. Oh, and I also forgot to mention this, but like through my time of researching and through my time with speaking with college admission officers, what they've always mentioned to me is that they compare your SAT score to your school's average. And so you can find like your school average SAT score along with like the score report that College Board gives you after you've taken like your SAT, and they compare it to like that average score. So I know for Larchmont, which is the school that I go to, like our SAT average is like 1,000 or something. And so if you get a much higher score than that, like even just a 1300 compared to like 1,000, that really makes you stand out. So don't be pressured to like get a 1500 on the SAT. If you get something low, that's also fine. So I mentioned super scoring, and a lot of you guys may not know what that is. And so super scores are SAT scores that take the highest English score and the highest math score out of all of your tests. So for example, like I have a super score of 1520. That's what I will be submitting to colleges that accept super scores. And so in my first SAT, I scored a 1420, and I got 730 on English and 690 on math. On the second SAT that I took, I got a 1480, and I scored a 690 on English and a 790 on math. As you can see here, my highest English score is a 730, while my highest math score is a 790. And so by combining those two highest scores, I have a super score of 1520. And most colleges will allow you to super score. There's obviously like the exception of like some colleges like Harvard, they don't allow you to super score. But other colleges like UPenn, they'll allow you to super score. And they will treat your super score as like a regular SAT score, so you don't need to worry about that either. And the reason why I say like, oh, you should retake as many times as possible, which is, 3 times, that should be your max. Going over that, it's a red flag. But you should retake as many times as possible because you will have more chances to like score higher on like English or math, and you will have more of an opportunity to super score your SAT. Alright, so if you're set on restudying for the SAT and retaking your SAT, then I want to emphasize that studying for your second or even third SAT should be almost the exact same process as your first one, unless you've used up all your Blue Book practice tests. College Board adds you practice tests every now and then, but if you've used up all your Blue Book tests, then use the College Board question bank as your main resource. But also by this point, you should be like familiar with the SAT. So studying should be more like a review rather than constant practice that you've done with like constant testing and constant review. Alright, that's it for this video. If you have any other questions, feel free to comment down in this video. I respond pretty quickly to all comments, so please feel free to ask me any questions. Additionally, you can contact me on Instagram at @udongster. That's my Instagram handle. So yeah, thank you very much for watching.